Before we get to our first speaker from India, who's representing Startup India, I just want to say a little bit about what we have planned for you for today. We have three types of speakers, basically. We have first the policymakers and the people who are, I call policy influencers. In that category, we have Startup India, which is the nodal agency of the government to try to promote startups in India. And then we have a speaker from the Gates Foundation, which is in the private sector trying to help create financial inclusion in the Indian economy. So there'll be sort of two perspectives at a more 30,000-foot and a 10,000-foot perspective, if you will. And then we're going to dive into more individual stories of companies. And we have four founders of successful Indian startups who will be speaking to us. One is in the fintech space, financial payments, e-payment space. It's Paytm for those from India. It's a well-known name. It's the leading provider of digital financial services in India. And then we have the founder of a company called Snapdeal, which is a leading e-commerce firm. So those would be two digital startups, if you will. And then we have two other companies, as you already heard from the Consul General. One of them is a space company, Skyroot Aerospace, which launched the first Indian private rocket and has some interesting plans for the future. And finally, we have a company called Krishna Diagnostics, whose co-founder, Pallavi Jain, has come from India to attend this summit, will be joining us shortly. And they provide high-quality, very low-cost diagnostic services all across India. So those are four case studies. Then we have three investors participating. Again, they represent three different types of investors. We have an Indian venture capital firm, Bloom Ventures. We have an Indian crowdfunding firm, that's One Crowd. In each case, we have the founder or a co-founder or a managing director or managing partner speaking to us. And we also have a foreign impact investor, which is Omidyar Network, and the director of their investments in India will be speaking to us. Now, these are interspersed. They don't all come in that order, but as you go along, you'll see that when you put it all together, we'll have a very interesting, deep perspective of what is happening in the Indian ecosystem. The format will be typically that we'll have a chair who starts off the conversation with the guest. We generally ask them not to use any slides to make it more interactive and conversational. We may have a video clip or two once in a while to introduce you to the organization. And then we make it a point to have time for Q&A from the audience. So please think of your questions and someone will come with a mic for you to pose the question to our guests. So with that said, I'm wondering, are we ready for the next speaker? Terrific. So our next speaker is coming from Startup India in New Delhi. As I said, Startup India is the government agency responsible for encouraging and supporting startups. Dr. Surabhi Gupta is with us. She's filling in for Asta Grover, who was pulled aside for a very important meeting at the last minute. I'm going to turn it over to you, Surabhi. I think before you start, you wanted us to show a video. So if you could roll the video clip on Startup India, it's like a 1 or 2 minute introduction to Startup India. We will then hear from Dr. Surabhi.
स्टार्टअप्स का ये कल्चर देश के दूर दराज तक पहुंचे, इसके लिए 16 जनवरी को अब नेशनल स्टार्टअप डे के रूप में मनाने का फैसला भी किया गया।
Startup India was founded 7 years back in 2016 by our Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi and propel it towards becoming one of the largest innovation ecosystem in the world. From 8 unicorns in 2016 to 108 unicorns today, we have emerged as the world's third largest unicorn nation.
When government takes a responsibility of something, it takes proper care that it reaches every nook and corner of the country. So Startup India has been playing and will be playing a major role in the growth story of our country.
Last 7 years have seen an exponential growth in the number of startups and in the different kind of startups that are coming out in India. This is all possible due to the last 7 years journey of Startup India thinking about policies in a wholesome manner.
Various initiatives by Startup India have enabled this momentous growth.
Startup India has actually created a very good systems and processes for adoption of such technologies into government ecosystem. That's really helped us tremendously. And the platforms like GEM, the government e-marketplace, they have specific areas where startups can sell their product to government ecosystems.
This is only the beginning of our journey to a more innovative and inclusive idea. A nation of not just job seekers, but also job creators. Start innovations, start opportunities, start the future. Startup India.
Dr. Surabhi, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Professor Ramamurti. What everyone just saw was a trailer of a cumulative work done by various ministries at the central government and various departments at the state and union territory level to promote the startup ecosystem in India. Our nation's entrepreneurs have become a key contributor to the country's overall economic development. Good evening and a good morning to the audience, depending on your place of joining. I am Dr. Surabhi Gupta, part of Startup India team, Ministry of Commerce and Industry. And today in my next 10 minutes, I'll be focusing on opportunities and various initiatives that Startup India has been taking to promote startup ecosystem in India. Next slide, please. Startup India, the flagship initiative of Government of India, was launched 7 years back, as we all saw in the video itself, on 16th January 2016, with an aim and intent to catalyze startup culture and build a strong ecosystem inclusive of growth and entrepreneurship in the country. The startup movement, ignited by the Honorable Prime Minister, has stirred the spirit of innovation and entrepreneurship across the country, with a major focus on 3 handholding pillars. 1, simplification and handholding. 2, funding support and incentives. And lastly, industry academia partnership and incubation. Next slide, please. Since its onset, we have been relentlessly engaged with startups and budding entrepreneurs over the years to identify their needs and also foster an ecosystem wherein a plethora of initiatives and innovative startups could thrive and succeed. India today hosts the 3rd largest startup ecosystem across the globe. What you see on the screen are a few numbers of trajectory how India has taken from 2016, when this movement was initiated, to 2023. India's innovation ecosystem has ranked globally 40th in the Innovation Index by WIPO. And also, India has outperformed on the innovation relative to the economic development for the 14th year in a row. Today, India is the home to over 100,000 recognized startups. There are many, many more that are working beneath this layer. There's at least one recognized startup in every state and union territory of India, spread across 670 districts and working in across 57 different sectors. The first 10,000 startups took 808 days to be recognized, while our recent 10,000 cohort took a short span of only 138 days. Now, if you ask me what are the top 5 sectors that we have been seeing in the recognized startups, the data says it will be IT services, healthcare services, education, agriculture, and food and beverages. India now is a home to over 110 unicorns. Furthermore, beyond the unicorns, India has also startups added to the decathlon cohort. We have 4 today as we speak. This is a testimony to the miles reached by our domestic ecosystem that reverberates across the nation. As a result of which, we also introduced Startup 20 as an engagement group during India's G20 presidency. This initiative focuses on creating a global narrative for supporting startups. Additionally, after various rounds of successful Shanghai Cooperation Organization Forum, India also holds a permanent chair to Special Working Group on Startups and Innovation at SCO, which we got very recently. And this wouldn't have been possible to all the tireless entrepreneurs, ecosystem enablers that have been working, and a special mention to our women entrepreneurs. There are approximately 47 startups with one female director. We have also seen over 3,400% growth in the women led startups in our recognized cohort. 80% of these startups have reported greater social economic status post starting their own businesses. Next slide, please. These are few numbers to help you understand the current outlook of innovation and the startup landscape in India. The country has seen tremendous growth over the last 7 years, and these numbers were a testimony to the same. More than that, we have a footfall of over 630,000 registered users on our website, which is the Startup India Hub. And there have been various schemes to promote and support startups for the same. The funding schemes are Fund of Fund, Seed Fund Scheme, and Credit Guarantee Scheme. I'll not go in detail, but I'll be happy to talk in detail offline or online later. If the audience is interested to know about any of these funding schemes in detail. Besides that, Startup India has established 20 international bridges with different countries to broaden the scope and provide showcase opportunity to the Indian startups. Besides this, we have been working with various countries, including the Rhode Island MOU that Consulate General just mentioned in his opening remarks as well. We have partnered with different ministries, government departments, and central public undertakings for various programs and opportunities, which have enabled over 500 startups with different incubation, mentorship, and pilot opportunities. There have been various other changes, such as 57 regulatory reforms, providing 10 tax incentives to the startups, and also partnership building with various key enablers for the startups to have a instrumental support from our side. Next slide, please. Startups have been playing a pivotal role in shaping the structure of the country and also an important footprint in making India self-reliant. On an average, an Indian startup has been generating 11 jobs per year, and 98% of the total recognized startups, 100,000 that I mentioned, have created employment opportunities for over 105,000 employees. You'll be surprised to know that the 49% of the cohort comes from tier 2 and tier 3 cities of the country. So startups are not only coming from metropolitan cities, they are also coming from tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Over the years, the country has highly evolved in upskilling the technology domain. And needless to say that we have seen a huge penetration of digital adoption in our country. It's almost estimated to grow to 900 million from 750 million by 2022. Drone sector has also been growing exponentially. Homegrown drone startups have raised close to $40 million of equity funding in 2022 alone. Lastly, the partnership with big corporate houses have also been actively collaborating with the Indian startups. For example, the Reliance Retail acquired approximately 25% of stake in a Bangalore-based startup, Dunzo, acting as a classic example of inter-channel synergies. With this, we see that Indian startups have been attracting foreign investment, not just with big corporates, but also with VCs and angel investors. Um, Data and statistics say that almost 80% of global investors would have been investing in Indian startups by financial year 2025. Hence, startups are the key of the growth drivers in our Indian economy. It is a must that across different startups and stages, optimum support is provided to these startups. And we do recognize this and we have been trying to enable the same. Next slide, please. This is just a snapshot of the countries that we have been working closely with and the other countries that we have been associating and developing our programs through either bilateral or multilateral engagements. Last slide, please. This is the QR code wherein you can scan and go to our website to know details of everything I just mentioned. And I will be happy to take the questions from audience now.
Thank you, Dr. Surabhi. So if anyone has any questions, please raise your hand and someone will bring a mic over to you. Wait till the mic reaches you and then get straight to your question, if you could, while we wait for the audience to respond. Dr. Surabhi, could you tell us a little bit about the magnitudes of the support or the funding that the central government is able to provide? And when I think of China, for instance, there is actually support coming at all levels, from the central government to the provincial government, sometimes even to local, at the local level, or in the case of the big cities, at that level. Could you just give an idea of how extensive is that kind of support in the Indian context?
Thank you for that question, Professor Ravi, because I couldn't go into the details due to paucity of time during my slides. So we have three funding schemes. The first one is the seed fund scheme that has been almost giving 1,000 crores in INR for financial assistance for proof of concept and prototype development for the early stage startups. Besides that, we have fund of funds schemes that has been working approximately around 10,000 crore corpus. And lastly, the credit guarantee scheme, which is a collateral free loan scheme for these startups that is approximately around 100,000. Besides this is at the central level by one of the ministries, which is Ministry of Commerce. There are similar different opportunities of funding by other central level ministries as well. And we have around 31 state policies as well. So these state policies also have their own funding programs, schemes, initiatives to support the startups that are homegrown domestically in those states.
Thank you. You mentioned that almost every district has a startup, but we also know that the big cities are still very, very important hubs for startups, and that is certainly true in the US. Silicon Valley is still a major source of startups. Can you give us a sense of which are the cities, the big cities, the tier 1 cities, that are important centers for startups, and is there any kind of specialization across the cities?
Right. So while 49% of these startups are coming from tier 2 and tier 3 districts in India, the unicorns that we see emerging, and also to say some of the major unicorns, have been from Bangalore, Bombay, Pune, Delhi NCR, Professor Ravi. We understand that AI and deep tech has been a core focus of these metropolitan cities, wherein we see the major unicorns and unicorns coming in from. And also the remaining 51% of these startups that we see have been from these metropolitan cities, which I said were Bangalore, Pune, Bombay, Delhi, NCR. And these also include Ahmedabad, the remaining 51% of the big metropolitan cities.
Thank you. We have a couple of questions from the audience. We may have time for two. Sanjay in the back, and then Lata in the front. And then if we have time, we'll get to the others. Please.
All right. Thank you, Ravi. Dr. Gupta, this is very good. So let me ask you a question about how the startups are accessing their market. So for example, are they selling into the US, and how is the government supporting them, and how are they reaching us, and how can we, sitting in the US here, we're in Boston, how can we help? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Sanjay, our market access support is two-pronged. We see it at national level as well as international level. At domestic level, the market access, besides the ones that the startups are already suo moto operating with, we provide them in a way of one, corporate access, second, ministry access for public procurement, and lastly, domestic connects and product showcase. We have our government e-marketplace, as one of the startups in the video also mentioned, to showcase their work and also sell to the government directly. Coming to the international platform and to the US in specific, the entire idea of formulating these international bridges with various countries is to have a direct, a one-to-one connection, wherein we often hold programs such as buyer-seller meets, pitching series, mentorship series, and exposure visit with an idea that the startups are one able to see that how they can bridge the gap, how they can sell their products and services in the other country, and also at the same level give them an understanding of how to expand their businesses. For example, participation in CES Vegas has been one of the key initiatives that Startup India has been doing and looking forward to. Besides that, we hold investor roundtable with the US investors, wherein we matchmake their requirements with the startups and the cohort that we have. If I have more details on your background, Sanjay, I will be happy to connect, and I hope Professor Ravi can help us bridge this communication. And I'll be happy to connect you with the startups and see if we could collaborate in any way.
Thank you, Dr. Surabhi. We will do that offline. We have time for, I think, one more question from Lata.
Thank you. Dr. Surabhi, this is very encouraging to see, especially my ears perked up when you said women entrepreneurs and women-led startups. As a policymaker here in the US, in a small state, I want to ask you about how the connection of state to state, nation to nation, but the startup to startup, there are multiple layers to it, the second and third tier cities, and how are you going about in terms of governmental level policy and the startups connecting to, so the market is opened up to the second and third tier cities and states here in the US?
Right, Lata, thank you for that question. We are still a work in progress in that concern. We have been trying to expand with initiatives like MOU with ecosystem like Rhode Island and the others. We are in fact planning to very soon also come up with a handshake program between India and US to penetrate to the smaller areas in the US as well. One of the main initiatives that we have in pipeline to do so is to have an experience sharing and collaboration initiative between the startups directly from India and the US. We had this model which we saw as a success in Finland market in gaming industry, wherein Indian startups could discuss their experience and have a knowledge sharing session with the Finnish startups on AR, VR driven products and services, and we saw some great case studies there. So we are planning to expand that to the US markets as well. We are in discussions with the Consular General and our counterparts there on the same. I'm happy to take your suggestions if you have any on the same offline as well.
Thank you, Dr. Surabhi. Lata Mangipuri is a representative in the New Hampshire House of Representatives and has come down from Nashua to join us this morning. So I think that would be a nice connection to make as well. Time is up, unfortunately. I know there are a few more questions, but I'm afraid we have to move on. Thank you, Dr. Surabhi. I also want to thank you for your support for the Pitch Fest, the social Pitch Fest that we run every year now, the last few years, with Geetham University called the Smart Ideathon, which has become one of the largest competitions of its kind, I think, in India. And you always attend it and encourage and have terrific questions for the presenters. So thank you for that support, and we will have a bit more to say about the Smart Ideathon initiative that's also part of the Vivek Vandana Sharma India initiative. So thank you, Dr. Surabhi. I know it's late in the evening for you. We appreciate your time and look forward to staying connected. Yeah, thank you.